Hello. This video series is basically to prep SMs or JAMs for getting prepared to host the debugging workshop. This workshop is basically comprised of like a live debugging demo as well as some debugging exercises for students to complete. The demo will kind of show off the code as well as some IntelliJ tools, and then the live debugging part is, or the student debugging part is to help them get familiar with using the tools that's being shown in the demo, and then working their way through the bugs presented in this project. The main goal of the project, or this whole workshop, is to like teach them the tools. That way it's a lot easier for them to use IntelliJ. There's a lot of fast tools that like speed up reading code, navigating code, as well as refactoring stuff. And there's a lot of useful debugging tools as well. And then hopefully they can apply that to the actual bug examples in this project. And an extra bonus is you can also have the instructors sort of present a live debugging demo, so they can use all the tools and solve the bugs that the students are like working with at the very end. That way you can like give them a solution, but also a demo of like, oh, how would I as a student solve a bug like this? So first things first is there's some extra resources for students to have as a later reference, as well as you, like the instructor, to know about. These are probably like the stuff that you should like be familiar with when you're like demoing. How you do the demoing is sort of up to you. There can be like one central teacher at the front of the classroom sharing their screen with everyone, and then everyone sees this one demo. Or you can have smaller groups where each of the SMs or JAMs assigned to like 5 students are like showing them in like a small group all of these demo stuff, and people can ask questions. But the first thing is these IntelliJ hacks. So what these are shortcuts and really useful parts of IntelliJ that are really good for productivity because they help you like find code faster. I'll have a video basically showing how to use all these, so hopefully it should be more intuitive after you watch the video. This is just a reference in case you want to like search something up or find something for later use. And then there's the actual bugs. So I do have a solution guide on like all the bugs being added, and I'll also talk about the bugs when I talk about all of the code in the video. But here's like a solution guide. It's kind of hard to read just because it's all text, which is kind of the reason why I'm making a video. That way it's easier to consume. And as for the actual project, if you haven't seen so far, the project itself is like a tic-tac-toe demo. Exactly what you would expect for tic-tac-toe. The only variation is the code allows you to customize the size of the board, so it can be like 3 by 10 or like 4 by 6. And then you can also specify how many pieces in a row you want in order to win. So you can have like a 10 by 10 board, but you only need 9 X's in a row to win, etc., etc. And then, so I have 2 bugs for the tic-tac-toe variation. These are just like sort of starter tasks, and there's a harder bug to find in a variation of tic-tac-toe called ultimate tic-tac-toe. It's kind of a bigger version of tic-tac-toe. The main explanation of how this works is every time you make a move, let's say as O, if you make that move in one of these inner tic-tac-toe boxes. So say I'm on the top left, and inside the top left I am O, and I go in the top right. That means that the next player has to go in the outer top right box. So this one in this outer top right, and you can go anywhere in there. And then you sort of follow it. So usually you'll never be like in the same box for a long time. You keep jumping around which box you're in. There's a good video linked on the GitHub explaining how the game works. You don't really need to know this because in my experience, most students during the debugging workshop don't get past the bugs in the tic-tac-toe portion. For reference, I held it for 2 hours. So most of the time you'll be like helping them work through the bugs and like reading the code. But in the case that they finish early, this is a nice bigger project for them to use a lot more of the debugging tools. And then last thing is there is a design document. It's not really a design document, it's just sort of notes on all the variables and how like some of the bigger functions work in the code. There will also the next video in this will basically be explaining all the code, so you can use this document as a reference, but watch the video first. Yeah. Oh yeah. Quick extra note, I do really want to emphasize the importance of teaching these IntelliJ tools. When I first hosted the workshop, I sort of de-emphasized it. I didn't really, it was sort of like an extra +1. But after the workshop, and I talked to a couple students who actually like reached out to me a couple weeks after the workshop. They said they really enjoyed, and like probably the biggest thing they took away from it, if anything, was all of the IntelliJ tools, and they were probably the most grateful for that in terms of like it really sped up their productivity and made their lives easier. I think the actual live debugging is nice to sort of think through the process, but it's a little bit more of a little bit of guided practice. But the IntelliJ tools themselves is like something that like is very concrete and they take away really quickly, rather than having like a small like learning experience for how to solve a bug. I think the IntelliJ tools actually help very long term, so I'd really like to emphasize like how important they are, because I definitely didn't consider them to be that useful when I first started.